Welcome to The Manly Catholic. In this podcast, we will inspire, challenge, and equip all men to become the men they were created to be. Join us as we journey together to become the best versions of ourselves and strive to change our communities one man at a time. Hello, all. Welcome to another episode of The Manly Catholic. This is James with Dan McNally, who's having trouble with his microphone.
Can you hear me?
Are you having trouble over there, Dan?
Just the best kind of trouble.
Okay, then.
I think it's good now.
We're going to start with a Hail Mary because we're going to need extra help here.
Oh, it's going to be a good one.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Dan, I have another question for you.
Shoot.
Let me pull it up here.
I will prepare myself. I will get into a ready stance.
Dan McNally.
Yes. James Caldwell.
If all the priests in the world disappeared, they died.
No, say disappeared.
Disappeared.
I can't handle that.
Could there be priests again?
I would say no, without supernatural divine intervention.
Intervention? Okay, that was good.
That was an easy answer.
All right. I didn't think so either. I didn't know if there's any loopholes that I wouldn't know about. All right, moving on.
Good episode.
Great. So the movie Civil War, let's talk about it.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
Let's get political.
Let's get political. Well, hey, let's just announce what we're going to do. Should we do it?
What are we going to do?
November. Wait, when's
Oh, wait, are we
election
actually
day?
doing that?
Yeah. Are you not on board anymore?
I don't know. I
Let's let the people decide.
What people? Is anyone out there?
Is anyone listening?
Are you there, God?
It's Tuesday. He's listening.
That's right.
So
our
is
number
Mary,
one listener.
and so is Joseph. So we have three people.
That's like saying our parents are watching our play or something.
Which they are.
Aw.
Spiritual mother and spiritual father.
Not even our biological parents listen.
I thought Dan was on board for this, but we were going to do a live episode on Tuesday, November 5th.
There's a possibility. As long as I've voted and am perfectly satisfied with how things are going.
If you haven't voted by the time we normally record a podcast, you probably need to get some priorities straight.
We do have a very flexible job.
We do.
I can just tell my patients that I'm not going to be there.
I voted 4 years ago.
That was... Oh, well, you had this job 4 years ago. I did not.
Well, 2 years ago, I voted too. That was, yeah.
I think I did.
You don't remember if you voted?
I mean, I would assume, knowing myself, that I did.
I don't know who this guy is anymore. Okay. I'm not going to... Well, so we might do it, apparently. We might not. But we're talking about Civil War, the movie.
Yeah, what'd y'all think?
I didn't enjoy it.
I did enjoy it.
You did.
Hesitantly. Cautiously.
Cautiously.
Did you see it by yourself?
I did. Did that make a difference?
I saw it with my brother and my uncle.
I guess I just... Well, it's very ironic about the media. I thought that was funny. The press. Because they... Was it who's the main...
Mary Jane Watson from Spider-Man. Kirsten Dunst.
That's who it was. Like, I've seen you before and I didn't look her up. Okay, so Kirsten Dunst is the main...
Or the girl from Bring It On. The main cheerleader.
Bro, wow. Bring It On. I did see that movie.
You started to say Bring It On and then you said, oh, wow. And it made it sound like you said, bro, wow.
No, I did.
I like that. You should start saying that.
Bro.
Like, bro, wow.
That's my catchphrase.
That'll be, I think we just discovered your catchphrase.
Bro, wow.
Didn't take too long.
What was it talking about? Kirsten Dunst.
Talking about Civil War.
So I think most people would agree with me on this is if you have seen the movie, it was they definitely took liberties with the fact that Kirsten Dunst was just like, when you're in the press, because they're photographers, okay, it followed these 3 photographers throughout the movie, basically. And she basically was just like, you have to be super objective. Our job is just take the shot, and that's it. Like, we don't choose sides, basically, which I think we all chuckled at, because we know that most of the mainstream media is biased one way or the other. You can make, I think you can clearly see that.
That's an unfair statement.
I think you can clearly see that. But they portrayed them to be total jerks, and like in an obnoxious way, though. It wasn't like in a subtle way, but it was like people were dying all around them, and they weren't even trying to help them. They just like got their camera out and they were shooting away.
Does that make them a jerk? I mean, they're trying to be objective. They're trying. I mean, what are they going to do for some of these people, though? Like, I mean, again, it's been a long time. He surprised me with this episode topic, so I haven't seen this. I would need to watch it again. But I mean, what specific scenes?
Well, just like people need help. Like, it's not even like people are actively dying, but they're just like, they need help. Like, whether it's they need like a bottle of water or something.
Do they have a bottle of water?
They can easily go get one. But there's like, no, we're just here for the shot. Like, that was just like the whole theme of it. It's like, we're here for the shot. We need the perfect shot. And that was like, they're robots. Why do they need the perfect shot, Dan?
Her whole point was that their job is to represent the horrors of war. Right? So, I mean, I thought of it from a different perspective. It's like they're literally putting their lines on the line. They're on the front lines of this like military engagement. People are getting shot left and right, and they are right there, civilians without weapons, jumping out to get a picture so that people who are not on the front lines can see this. Like, I think of like the tank in what's the famous picture in Tiananmen Square in China? Mm-hmm. The picture of the guy standing right in front of the tank, or the picture of the flag being raised.
Iwo Jima?
At Iwo Jima.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think of those things, and I think of like either to inspire, patriotism, or to inspire horror, or to inspire emotion, to stir people's hearts about these things that are happening far away from them. That was my take, but I sympathize with your perspective.
But I also don't like too that they were putting soldiers' lives on the line because they were actively getting involved in like heavy gunfire, which I doubt this is realistic.
I don't know.
And then like military were trying to get them out of the way, putting themselves in danger to protect these idiot photographers who don't know. You probably shouldn't get in the middle of a gunfight. That was my take.
It's the risk they take, I guess.
But I don't know. I just thought it was obnoxiously
I see how
trying
it can seem
to be
very,
there,
like, cold-hearted
objective,
to be a robot.
But because it's not. I don't know. Were they trying to be? I don't even know who produced this movie. To be honest, I don't know if they had a political game.
A24.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
Yeah.
But it was, and it's just. I think I almost was laughing because like this is not how our media is, and we all know this to be the case. Mm-hmm. They're not going out of their way, putting their lives in danger to be objective. They're the exact opposite. They are clickbait. They take people out of context. They rarely check sources from what it appears to be, and just like, oh, I heard this one thing maybe from someone possibly, and I'm gonna use that as fact.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if
that's
like media in terms of pundits and talk show hosts are a different breed from like war photographers. Because to be fair,
maybe.
Yeah, like,
and maybe
like
I'm taking this to extreme.
Like a different subclass of the media being like
that's true.
These people.
That's fair.
No, I would agree with what you said about anyone in
I guess the way they made it out to be was like this is what the media's job is, not just the photographers.
If that is the argument, then yeah, I would agree with you.
Okay,
it's a little silly, like making themselves out to be martyrs when they're really they're really the opposite.
And that was kind of the take I got is what they were trying to do. Portray it, and I think that's why I didn't like it.
That's fair.
What else did you like about it?
Nick Offerman.
Which one is he again?
He's who's the guy from Parks and Rec? He's the president.
Oh, he was the president?
Yeah. Did you?
Well, I didn't.
That's
Watch,
like a
I didn't watch Parks and Rec, so.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know who that is.
I mean, I didn't watch it either, which is why I'm embarrassing myself by not being able to think what his name was.
I'll look it up for you.
I appreciate.
What's his name? Nick Offerman.
Nick Offerman. Yeah, it'll probably be the first thing that comes up.
I do like that actor.
Yeah.
He is. Who did he play in Parks and Rec?
Why can I not think of his name? It's got a good alliteration.
Ron Swanson.
Ron Swanson, that's it.
There you go.
Yeah, more of an Office guy myself.
Me too.
So, see, maybe we can make the episode about The Office. Or Civil War.
What else did you like about it? Besides Ron Swanson?
I thought it was a little bit forced and a little bit weird, but I really appreciated that it did seem like they did their very best to not make it
overtly political.
They did a pretty good job of making themselves, generally speaking, neutral. I had my own inklings of where the creators of this movie were coming from.
Me too.
But that said, I think they did a decent job of keeping it neutral. Comically so, in a very meta way. They made one of the factions in the country the Texas-California alliance, and I'm like,
that's super funny.
One of the reddest states and the bluest states are the alliance, and they're two of the biggest states. It's just kind of funny that ended up being almost as like a tip of the hat, like a wink.
Was this based on a book or anything?
No idea.
Okay. Because there's no backstory, and that bothered me either. I had so many questions. Which I know not all movies.
Well, I mean, we talked about this last time. We talked about Dracula and other books. Is like, I'm not as much bothered by that because I don't need a coherent lore. Like, I don't need J.R.R. Tolkien, like Silmarillion for a story as long as the story is interesting and makes a point.
Yeah, I guess A Quiet Place didn't really have a backstory either.
Right.
It was a great movie.
You watch like the pitch meeting for A Quiet Place, and you realize like, oh no, there are a lot of holes in this plot. But it doesn't. Maybe
I watched this movie in a bad mood, and now I was cynical.
I don't know. I watched it in an excited mood. Okay. I think I was maybe giving it a little more credit than I normally would have. But
that's fair.
I don't love. I mean, artists can be artists, do whatever. I don't love that we're talking about Civil War so much right now. We're making movies called Civil War about our country falling apart. Yeah. I don't know if that helps
probably not
the temperature right now, but
it definitely does not.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to that amazing episode. I just want to take a quick break to thank one of our sponsors, which is especially near and dear to my heart because it's all about coffee. For the best coffee for a great cause, we recommend Mystic Monk Coffee. Roasted with prayer by the Carmelite Monks in Wyoming, Mystic Monk Coffee has the ultimate cup waiting for you. See more at mysticmonkcoffee.com. If you decide to support the podcast on our Patreon page at the $20 per month level, we will actually send you a bag of Mystic Monk coffee for free. As you all know, one of our missions with the podcast is to help support our priests. So what better way to do that than to combine coffee with the priesthood? Go check out their website today. Again, that's mysticmonkcoffee.com. Thank you all so much for listening. Let's get back to that episode.
Well, it made me think, too, of a bit of a civil war going on like in the Catholic Church, too, because there's a lot of division within it as well.
Right.
Which is really sad.
It's really interesting, even on a political level, being an election year. It's like they say that Democrats and Republicans split down the middle in the Catholic vote. Mm-hmm. Kind of crazy.
But
not a lot of other religious groups are that way. Interestingly enough, I feel like a lot of religious groups are.
Really?
I would say
I
so.
don't know.
Maybe
don't know.
Christian denominations is more of an appropriate way to phrase that.
You feel like they're more
because I feel like depending on the sect of Judaism, for example, that you worship in, it's like some are conservative, some are liberal. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, it is interesting that it seems quite split down the middle in the Catholic vote. What did Pope Francis say about that?
Oh, you want to go there? So Pope Francis, for those of you who do not know, I'll leave a link to an article from the NC Register who kind of did a good job of it. He basically said he actually mentioned the U.S. election specifically. He said to summarize, the two candidates are not perfect, and you essentially need to choose the lesser of two evils.
Okay.
Essentially.
I mean, I buy that so far.
But how he worded it was he kind of went into why he said that. And, well, one, he says to vote with your conscience, which I always hate that phrase, vote with your conscience.
Why? Why do you hate that phrase?
Because it relies on you having a moral compass and a moral conscience to choose wisely. And I think in this day and age, I don't think, I could be wrong. I think many people are not, their consciences are not properly formed. I mean, just look at the division in the Catholic Church. I think that most Catholics don't know church teaching. I think it's just poor catechesis in general. But then he breaks down President or former President Trump and Kamala Harris, and he said one is for abortion, which is clearly Harris. And then he basically made the argument about immigration, and Trump wants to deport all the illegal immigrants. And he basically said both are against life. And that's why
but then
you need to vote for your conscience.
Interestingly, too, Trump has actually come under fire from conservative Catholics as well recently because of his stance on IVF, which I thought was an unusual, kind of came out of nowhere.
It did come out of nowhere.
Like, I see what he's trying to say by it. Like, like he literally came in. He's like, we love babies. We want more babies.
Right.
I'm not going to make you suffer through me trying to impersonate him, by the way. I'm just going to say the things that he said.
That's fair.
And it's like, okay, I see how you could look at that and say, like, oh, that's pro-family. But, like, the idea that ultimately IVF still is the reason that the church is opposed to it, among many other reasons, is this production of human life that will be indefinitely frozen or destroyed in the attempts at producing
probably destroyed
a fertilized egg that can be implanted and so on and so forth.
Right.
So it's this intentional. It's harsh phrasing to say intentional destruction of life, but that's kind of what it is. Like it's we'll just call it knowing destruction of human life. It doesn't make it much better.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like those who go about and again, this is not. I think a lot of people don't really think through all of the process of it. So anyone who has been conceived through IVF or they've conceived their own children through IVF, neither I nor the Catholic Church nor James are pointing fingers. I think a lot of people go through the process not knowing all of these things, and with a sincere desire to have children, to bring children into the world. Like the intention is a beautiful one, and that's a great thing. The reason that the church is formally against it is for the reason that I stated, right? So it's tough when topics are prickly and they're very, very much intertwined with like the very process of us being brought into the world. Because I had students who were children conceived through IVF, and like we talked about this in moral theology, and like imagine being a high school student just being like, that's how I was made, and does that make me evil? It's like, no, it doesn't. Yeah. In fact, it doesn't necessarily make your parents' decision bad at all, because again, it's about what we know, right? We're held responsible for what we know, and even if they did know, like I don't know, I can explain what the church teaches, why it teaches it, but I cannot know the hearts of the people that act, right?
Right. Well, another thing too, just because something happened that was not properly done does not change the gift of life that was given from it. Yeah, because I had a classmate in grad school who was conceived via IVF, and she was amazing. Yeah, and she was a very dear friend of ours.
As if,
it's not like you should be
produced all these other fertilized eggs that are now frozen.
Yeah,
your blood is on your hands. Like that would be silly, but you can affirm the goodness of life, the fact that obviously a person's moral worth is not connected to that in any way, and you can affirm the uncomfortable reality of the production of all of these fertilized eggs, which is to say human beings, like with a soul.
Right. 100%.
Which like kind of makes us sound a little kooky, I think. Like
why?
I don't mind embracing it because it's the truth. And if I'm happy to try for someone to convince me otherwise. Like for us to say, oh, you think all those little eggs in there, like there's a bunch of little souls? It's like, yes. Because we believe as Catholics that a soul is like God ensouls the human person at the moment of conception, right? So if all of these fertilized eggs, which is like that's the sort of antiseptic language that we love to use too. It's just a clump of tissues. It's just a fertilized egg. It's just a zygote. It's just a fetus. All of those things have souls.
No matter what language you want to use.
And given the natural process through which they would develop, fully form human body, human soul is there to begin with. Can a fertilized egg suffer? No. But that doesn't mean that you create and destroy with reckless abandon.
Right.
So there you go. Hot take. By the way, I said during the Shroud of Turin episode that it was a literally spicy episode. I never explained that. It was because of the fire. That's how the fire burned the shroud, but I never said that. So a little piece, a little throwback for you.
Kudos to all of you who listen to every single episode and listen to every word.
That's everybody, isn't it?
Yes. 100%. What were we talking about? Pope Francis.
Everything.
This
is one of those episodes.
Stream of consciousness. Part 2.
Is that what you're going to call it?
No. So Pope Francis, so he compared Harris to Trump and their non-pro-life stances, I guess you could call it. But I would easily poke holes in his argument that advocating for abortion is vastly different.
There's no question. Yeah.
Is vastly different than advocating for, which I don't even know this is Trump's take, to be frank with you. I turned off the debate.
Well, he said that they're eating the cats and they're eating the dogs.
Well, I did hear that. I did hear that part.
That was my favorite part.
But this advocating for like mass deportation, I don't know if that's his policy, to be frank. Let's just say it is his policy. It's like, I'm going to deport all these illegal immigrants who are here. There is a difference between actively murdering someone and actively removing them from the country.
And even in again, I'm gonna speak probably out of ignorance here. I can just think of my friends who are like immigration attorneys and things that I'm just gonna say all the wrong things. But like even within the realm of deportations, like respecting the sovereign laws of a nation that are just laws, it brings up a really interesting question of, I've been watching some people debating on whether or not it's the job of the United States to
police the world,
to provide the financial support for these third world countries that a lot of people are coming from, so that they don't feel the need to come here. There's often a contradiction in those arguments. The same people that would call us, that would say that we shouldn't police the world and that we shouldn't be involved in other people's dealings, will also be the ones that were like, oh, we need to send money and we need to send aid to these particular situations for these particular reasons. I don't want to get too much into it, but at what point? I mean, so when I was a teacher, we'd have active shooter drills, and there was always that question of, like if somebody's banging on your door, like a student or whatever. At least at the time when I was teaching, like the rule was like you just can't let anybody in at that time. Like students are supposed to know like where to go if they're in the, like that's part of their instruction or whatever. But the idea being like me opening the door for them also risks every single person in the room. Now that is a gross oversimplification as a parallel to like immigration, but the idea being is like at what point can we continue to let people in a process that doesn't respect the laws of the nation, doesn't respect the resources of the nation? At what point does the ship sink?
Yeah.
Right. There's multiple variables, whether it comes to crime, whether it comes to economics, whether it comes to housing, whether it comes to all these things. So there's a lot that plays into it, but I would say like saying like, oh, well, Trump is for deportations. Like, even if he is, like, why is that like on its face value? Why is that bad because people will say like, oh, well, he's a racist. He hates like people from other countries. Like consistently over and over again, all he says is talking about criminals and talking about like the worst of people that pour. He doesn't say like, oh, we got those Mexicans coming into the like he's never phrased it that way
Right.
ever.
Yeah.
I listen closely for this stuff because I'm sensitive to this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I've never heard him say that. I've never heard him say something like, oh, I
hate all Mexicans. Get them out.
right. It's like, because it's people from, it's because they're from this country. He's like, no, it's the criminals from these countries. It's the this and that. So I can find some agreement with you on saying like, and I would again go a step further and say like, just because he's for deportation, like I have a hard time seeing why just saying deportations are a bad thing. I don't
get it. And that's what makes the
I'd have to look because I'd have to look into kind of the moral theology in terms of geopolitical issues, but I don't really know if the church has a clear and obvious stance on that kind on like immigration. I'd have to look into that.
Well, from what I remember from the Catechism, it says a nation has the right to basically dictate what kind of immigration is allowed that's not going to overwhelm the nation,
right?
The nation's resources, right?
So
mass immigration with like no policies in place, just let everyone in, is not healthy for the country,
right? I think most people would agree.
Yeah,
with
most
that.
people do agree with that. And I mean, the argument can easily go the other way too, where it's like, okay, you have all these people that are here illegally. What do you do with them?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you can be morally justified in saying, hey, you broke the law, you got in here, and we're going to send you back to where you were. Now, there's very emotional arguments attached to that.
Right, and I don't know how you adjudicate that on a case-by-case basis, because very easily somebody, just like with the abortion argument, somebody could say this little girl got raped or something like this.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, like why don't maybe we can come to an agreement, take all the 0.1% of abortions that are from rape and incest.
Yeah.
Let's just say we agree on that.
Yeah.
And just for simplifying the argument, then take the 99% of cases that are not what you're talking about, but you're using that to try to guilt me in front of all these other people into saying what you want me to say.
Right.
And in the same way, it's like, of course, from a place of like compassion on an individual basis, you want people who are actually fleeing from dictatorships or fleeing from violence. Of course you want them to be able to help. Yeah. But I think individual moral conscience is a very different thing from effective like government policy.
Right.
They're not the same thing.
They're not at all.
And I think we just conflate those two things. I will be the first person to say that I'm ignorant on these topics, but I think in principle what I just said is true.
100%. Well, and I think too, what bothered me the most about what Pope Francis said was he compared the two basically. It's like, well, because Trump said this, that basically equates to the topic of abortion, which again to me is just, they're not even on the same playing field. We have Harris who basically said she's okay with third trimester abortion up to that point, which is just heinous in my mind. And we can't have that. If you are a practicing Christian, I don't know how in good conscience you can support someone who is so actively for abortion. And because this is my policy, because I've had a debate with my friends on this a little bit who are pro-life, but they said, I said my argument, this was during the last election, I think too. I said my problem or the reason why abortion is so strong for me, besides all the moral arguments, is if you get this policy wrong, what is that going to trickle down into all of your other policies? What I mean by that is if you are so anti-life to begin with human life, that clearly is a human life, then the rest of your policies are going to be based off that premise where life actually is expendable if it's put in your reason, whether it's inconvenient for me, whether it's getting in the way of my career. Because like, okay, so if you are for abortion, then like what's your immigration policy going to be? Well,
and I think that's the deeper point too, is people are, whenever people attack pro-lifers, they say, oh, well, you're pro-birth, but you're not pro-life. And it's like, no, it's actually more than just the killing of children in the womb.
Right.
It's about the principle that undergirds it. That's what you're saying. Is like,
exactly.
What else are we what other attitudes do we have if we are ignoring those who can't speak for themselves, those who can't defend
100%.
themselves, right? Like it's this idea of like science marching forward without knowing whether or not it should, kind of a thing. In terms of, I mean, we talk about IVF, and I think it comes down to kind of two things. Well, maybe three things. With regard to abortion, one, part of the reason that it's a problem in the first case is because of such a sexualized culture, right? Like if I don't know, I don't want to get too spicy, too deep into the weeds.
Put some cayenne pepper on there.
But like, it's also this like plausible deniability, because like, oh well, it might not be a person, it might not be a human. So as long as I'm in this gray area, I'm just gonna assume that it's not.
Right.
I'm not gonna worry about whether or not. Yeah. So I don't know. It's.
You said two other things about.
I
lost train of thought.
Yeah.
I said three. There's only one.
But I don't know. It feels like on an intellectual level, on a matter of principle, it's very obvious, and on an emotional level, and on a kind of like a needs level for most people, it's very, very hard, and it's kind of like what we talked like it's just a very, I don't know, it's very personal. I don't mean personal like, oh, it's a personal decision. That's not what I mean. I mean, it's like
no, I know.
It's so tied. I don't know.
Well, because you can easily picture like having a conversation with someone who's going through a really hard time,
right?
And and I think people think too it's a one size fits all. And again, people who are struggling with that or having that question, it's a very. I mean, I don't deny the difficulty of circumstances that people are going through, but God is the creator of life. And I think it goes back to the IVF question as well. People who are conceived with IVF, that's still a gift from God, and that doesn't discount, despite whatever the circumstances were to conceive that child. And, I think I think when you get into the heat of the argument too, I think it is easy to kind of just be super objective about it and I think Trent Horn does a really good job of recognizing the humanity in it, but still bringing logic to the equation too. And, I think you mentioned it earlier where it's like, okay, I'll grant you all the hard cases, so to speak, which is like less than 1%. I'll grant you all that. But can we outlaw everything else? And most pro-choice advocates will say, no, right. I don't want that. Right. So clearly there's a deep...
So don't make that argument don't care about those, you really. Don't actually care about those. Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's... Again, I think people are starting to, get to the meat of the argument, so to speak.
I'll be super controversial. I'll say something that I think a lot of people would think is extremely ugly and hateful. So... Here I go.
Here we go.
Well, I heard recently there was the argument about like, I think it was somebody asking Charlie Kirk. It was in one of his videos. They said like, if your daughter was raped, would you not like have an abortion, like get her an abortion right away? And he said no. And she was so shocked. And I understand why she was shocked, right? Because the implication is like, as a father, you don't want to undo the harm that was done to your daughter. That's kind of the implication. What's the reality? The harm has been done to your daughter, right? Yeah. Like in this case, it's like, okay, she was raped.
It's a double harm.
You going in and committing this abortion is answering evil with evil, right? Now, the other harm about that is this idea that like, quote unquote, forcing someone to go through 9 months of pregnancy with a baby that was the result of a rape is a horribly, I will never experience that. I'm a man, right? I can only imagine is a horribly harrowing process. So I can't really speak to that except through the shared reality of suffering that we all experience. So I think his answer makes sense to me on an intellectual level. It's unfathomably difficult on an emotional level, but his principle rings true that what makes like the West and like Judeo-Christian tradition great is that we don't answer evil with evil. We answer evil with good. It's like the breaking of an evil cycle is a very hard thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
and it is a worthwhile thing to do. So the presumption is, as a father, he says, no, I would not get an abortion for my daughter if she were raped. But the implication is, I will be there with her every single step of the way,
Right.
supporting her and loving her and showing all and meeting all of the needs that she has,
Mm-hmm.
to show her the value of that, the value of answering evil with good,
Mm-hmm.
and not doing more damage, and becoming a cooperator in this sort of broken cycle, right? It's a horrible, horrible thing to talk about. But I mean, the truth is the truth.
Hey, all, thank you so much for listening to that episode. I just want to take a quick break to tell you about one of our sponsors, which is Tan Books. Tan Books is a family-owned traditional Catholic publishing company whose mission is to help people become saints. They believe that it is their duty to preserve and promote the spiritual, theological, and liturgical traditions of Holy Mother Church, especially in these challenging times. At TAN, they offer a wide variety of resources to help individuals on their journey to holiness and to become a saint. With over 1,000 titles ranging on topics from theology, scripture, church history, and books designated specifically for men, TAN aims to provide valuable knowledge and guidance that can help strengthen your faith and inspire spiritual growth. Join Father Dom and myself on this journey to sainthood. Visit tanbooks.com and be sure to use the code manlycatholic at checkout to get 15% off your order, and also helps support the podcast as well. Together, let's strive to become saints, aligning our lives with the teachings of the Church and fulfilling our mission to bring Christ to the world. Again, that is code manlycatholic at tanbooks.com. Thank you all so much for listening to this. Let's get back to that episode.
So
I think it just speaks in the grand scheme of things on the problem of evil as well.
right.
And again, talking about Trent Horn, he said, the problem of evil, he says the difficulty with someone who brings that up is that it's a very emotional argument,
Yeah.
right? But like intellectually and logically,
Mm-hmm.
it's a very easy problem to answer, right? Because evil cannot exist in and of itself. Like it's a privation of the good, right? So all evil takes something good and it basically pollutes it,
Yeah.
right? So
It looks the other way.
yeah, it looks the other way. So the ultimate good,
Evil, yeah.
yeah. And so I mean, he talks about that too.
That's why like
it's
sin of omission is a thing, right? Like there is a good that like screams to be done, and
Mhm.
you're not doing
You're
it.
not doing it, right? Is it because it is emotional, and as humans, we have such a hard time when, especially if it's a very personal thing, because God gave us the gift of emotions, obviously, and He wants us to feel things deeply. But I mean, St. Thomas Aquinas talks about it too, that it can cloud your way of thinking and your judgment if you become consumed by them, right? And you're not thinking, in your right state of mind. Because I mean, just think about like the hardest thing you've been through. Of course, you're not making good decisions because your mind is cloudy because you
Yeah.
just went through this tremendously, and you are going through this tremendously difficult thing.
Mhm.
I mean, you're overwhelmed with emotion, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, you have to have people in your life too, where maybe you can take a step back and like, okay, I'm not in my right state of mind. I can't make these big decisions like this. So like like Charlie Kirk, like again, his implication was that I'm going to be with her every step of the way.
And I would encourage people, if they're troubled or if their conscience is pricked by the things that we're talking about, like also looking up the stories of all these mothers who were victims of rape and who brought their children to term, and like just the miraculous stories that come along with those. It's
100%.
It's like we want to look at the moment and just cut it off because and it comes back to your Comfort Crisis book. We want, and I get the desire, like we want to alleviate the pain of those. And that motivation is a good motivation that is used to justify a lot of evil things.
Which motivation? To
The
eliminate
motivation to alleviate
the
pain
pain
of those we love. I mean, you
Gotcha.
think about like euthanasia and things like that.
Yeah, right.
Is all, it's uncomfortable, and it's not politically correct to talk about things that are actually the teachings of the church. Like we talk about like politicians saying, well, I'm for the exceptions, rape and incest and blah, blah, blah. And like health of the mother, like emotionally, very great, easy thing to say. Okay, cool. Catholic Church,
Not so much.
the exception to my understanding is based on the principle of double effect from Thomas Aquinas, that it is just in the case of the life of the mother Because again,
it's like an ectopic pregnancy.
Yeah, it's
super
like
rare cases.
Exactly.
Which
and
rarely happen.
Because of the fundamental moral principle that you cannot do evil. Yeah, you cannot do evil that good may result from it. You may not directly. And again, somebody might look at that and say like, BS, you're full of crap. You hate, like, I would hate to be friends with you. It's like, maybe get to know me first. Maybe actually have a conversation with me before you think that the inflammatory thing that I said that you're not willing to process.
Yeah, and confront.
Yeah, before you say things like that. But we're in a very, very broken, very, very hurting world. A lot of people hurting. And so when we're hurting, it's not as easy to have a clear-minded conversation. It's not as easy to love. It's not as easy to be loved. It's a freaking messed up world, dude.
Well, I read this book. It was called Terror of Demons.
St. Joseph?
No, it was not about. He does talk about St. Joseph by
I see Jurassic Park.
Joseph Kennedy.
Over there.
I think is his name. Anyways, but he talks about sin, and he puts it in very nice layman's terms. He basically said sin makes you stupid, and
I think that's true.
His and I have actually.
I'm very stupid, by the way, I should say.
We are not very intelligent, as you can see by this conversation.
Yeah.
But he goes into it. He goes, but if you're constantly sinning, he said, basically your judgment continues to deteriorate,
right.
To the point where you just can't make good decisions anymore because your judgment is so clouded. I think it kind of goes to the idea of, I think that's why vote by your conscience is, it bothers me is because, of course we're all sinners, but I don't know if in this day and age we are actively kind of self-reflecting.
But I mean, what other answer is there though? Like, what is he supposed to say?
What do you mean?
Like you said, you don't trust people's conscience. So like what?
Vote according to the principles of the teachings of the church.
Oh, well,
not by your conscience.
Well, that's the same thing. Like your conscience.
I don't know.
No. So you will always vote your conscience no matter what.
Okay.
You just will. Because your conscience is the interior voice of reason. You can have a malformed conscience that tells you that evil is good.
Yeah.
But you're all, like by it's almost
it's
almost
by
unnecessary.
The letter of the law.
Well, no, it's
fine.
almost pointless to say vote your conscience because you're going to vote your conscience.
Yeah.
Because if you're actively voting of your own free will, you will be voting your conscience.
Yeah.
Of course, you should be voting based on the principles of the church, right? And principles of just moral law.
But I think him saying that, people will say,
I think it's misleading.
Yeah, I think it's very misleading. I think as the Pope, he needs to say, you need to vote according to the teachings of the church.
Okay, no, I can get on board with that. I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Because I think when people say, oh, vote according to my conscience, it's like a free pass.
Right.
Well, my conscience says to vote for this candidate because...
Right. There's a lot of people that I've heard say that and use that. But
yeah. So that's my problem with that. So
I feel it.
Feel it?
I get it.
Do you?
I do.
That's good.
Right in my conscience. That's right where I feel it.
Where is your conscience, Dan?
It, I believe, is located in your right ear.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't think that's right. I see what you did.
See what it is? There it is. I gotta be honest with you, I just made that up. That's
really?
Funny. That's actually pretty funny.
That's pretty good.
Look, I don't often do this because humility is my greatest trait.
As you have said multiple times
But I did
now.
just make that up, and I think that was pretty funny.
Wow. I'm so proud
If you had done that in front of me, I would have said, that's really funny. But I said it. And we're not, it's not celebrate. You're not supposed to point out when you're fun. It was funny. It's funny. I'm going to use it.
You're not supposed to toot your own horn.
I'm going to use it again. I wanted to make a joke about Trent Horn, but I couldn't think of a way to do that.
Oh, toot your own horn.
Like toot. Yeah.
You should stop.
Yeah.
You should stop.
We're kind of spiraling.
We are. Should we just end it?
I don't know. Okay. See, that's the thing. People get uncomfortable. They just want to end
Should we just sit here
to alleviate the pain?
Should we just sit here?
Stare at each other's eyes for 4 minutes. No, sit in the discomfort. Maybe that's the challenge. Find a way to sit in discomfort and don't alleviate pain right away. Because, again, Catholics get this bad rap that we want to seek out pain and suffering. We've talked about this before. No, we do not want to seek out pain.
No.
And suffering. Jesus says that like the day has its own trials already. Don't like it's about God transforming. So we talked about this with Salvifici Dolores. Like
Which part?
The letter, the John Paul II's letter on,
No.
on
I mean,
suffering.
what did we talk about?
Oh, the
specifically
idea
about
that like we get this bad rap for seeking out suffering. No, the idea behind the church with like suffering is that it can be transformed and good can be brought out of it. So we're so afraid of pain and we try to eliminate it so fast. It's like maybe be willing to just sit in your discomfort, especially for the sake of sacrifice for others. But
I mean, I think the scariest thing that people are uncomfortable about is just going to God and saying, I surrender my life to you, and what's going to come out of it.
Good stuff.
I mean, honestly, because if you think about it, and if you tell God, I surrender everything over to you, that means he can do anything. And what's it going to be? And that's scary for a lot of people. It's scary for me.
We'll find out next time after James gives his life over to God.
Until next
We'll
time,
see
ladies
what
and
happens.
gentlemen, go out there and be a saint. Thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of The Manly Catholic. If you have not already done so, please hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. It will also help grow the show and reach as many men as possible. We truly think this podcast can change families and help men to change the world. Thank you again so much for tuning in, and God bless you.